This should be at final passage on this bill lowering the cost of insulin for Americans.
On this vote, the yeas are 232, the nays are 193. The bill is passed.
So that right there is an ad by Midas Touch about last night's insulin price cap vote. And I think at the end they go a little bit far with the Democrats save lives. Yeah, in some cases there's a lot more that they could do. But that's the sort of ad that I would love to see being made about things that have actually happened. And I'd love to see more of those things actually happen. What happened yesterday was the Affordable Insulin Now Act, okay? It would take effect in 2023 and it was successfully voted through the House. It would limit cost sharing under private health insurance for a month's supply of certain insulin products at $35 or 25% of a plan's negotiated price, whichever is less. That generally, when it comes to insurance, is not the way that that's worded, but $35 is a lot less than what most people, unfortunately, have to pay for insulin. And a lot of people have to pay for insulin because according to the CDC, 37.3 million people in the US have diabetes. That's an amazing number. You want a way more amazing number? According to government data, insulin costs about 800% more in the US than in other developed economies. Not 8% more, not 80% more, 8 times as much for the exact same thing. And newer versions of insulin these days can retail for between $175 and $300 a vial. It very much varies for people, but most patients with diabetes need 2 to 3 vials per month. Some require more, each one of those incredibly pricey. And since 2012, list prices of many of these new forms of insulin have risen particularly rapidly, as much as 15% year over year, over year, over year. And so some of this data is even a bit out of date, but the trend is clear. The price continues to skyrocket. One more amazing number for you before we get into the politics of this. The US represents only 15% of the global insulin market, but it generates nearly 50% of the industry's insulin revenue. That is great news for that industry and nobody else in the world. But that industry is who generally is protected by our government. Now, in this case, thankfully, we had it pass, okay? All of the Democrats voted to cap the price of insulin. 12 Republicans voted as well, and we're gonna acknowledge those soon. But when I say that 12 voted for it, that means that all of the rest of the Republicans voted against it, okay? That means that in a time where prices are skyrocketing and they love to talk about inflation and the rising cost of living, and they point at the Dems and say it's their fault. Do they want to do something about it? Do any of the so-called right-wing populists, the new breed of Republicans, that they're not interested in protecting corporations? No, they might disagree with us on social stuff, but they're definitely with us when it comes to cost and everything. No, none of them supported it either. Isn't that weird? It's almost as if right-wing populism is a complete ruse. But anyway, we're gonna get into some responses to this, Brett, but what do you think about this?
There are Republicans who voted against affordable insulin.
Many.
They all don't want it. And so sometimes you get trapped. You get locked into a vote where it is impossible for you to avoid voting a certain way. A byline in the initiative is something that the other side seizes on. No, this is what the debate was about. It was about insulin prices in marijuana. Yeah. Insulin prices. That's what they voted on. And Republicans don't want it. Now, what are they for? If you ask them, they're against government intervention on stuff like this. Kind of let it go, let it do where it is, because this is America and America yields the best systems and the best results the world over. Well, I hate to burst all of their pharma bubbles, but it does not. I've looked at the responses to tweets in this category today, and it's all like, oh, insulin should be free. That's another free thing that no one's gonna pay for and we can't afford. It's like, I hate to break it to you, but other countries serve it up for free.
Yeah.
They do pay for it. It's free at the point of getting it, but your taxes pay for it in other systems the same way your taxes pay for the fire department. So you don't have to pay the fire department an exorbitant amount of money. And in all of those countries that have a system where the hospitals work the same way as the fire department, they pay at least half as much They basically pay half as much per person for medical coverage in general, half as much, and they live longer. So our system does not yield better results. It is not a better system, and we need to pivot to one that is better than the one we have.
Exactly, yeah, and in the end, the people living in those countries, oddly enough, are happier in general terms than people living here supposedly in the better system. So we get to decide what sort of representatives do we want? What sort of government do we want? And you have some pretty clear alternatives in this case. You have people like Ilhan Omar, who notably voted to cap the price of insulin, saying House Republicans voting against lowering the cost of insulin, which is a life-saving drug, and it's something every member of the media should be asking them about. Republicans have been hammering Democrats on the rise of prices on things like gas and asking us to do something. But in reality, they really don't want us helping everyday Americans. They love screaming about problems and not coming up with a single solution. They have no agenda. And then on the other side, you have Republicans who, seeing the skyrocketing cost of insulin, defend the ever increasing profits that the pharma companies are making off insulin with comments like in this video.
Today is the government fixing the price on insulin. What's next? Gas? Food? History tells us that price fixing doesn't work.
Yes, okay, the thing though is we're not talking about whether to have price fixing or not, someone who is artificially determining the price of a thing. We have that right now. The question is, who is doing the fixing? They've decided, the pharma industry has decided that they can jack up the price of a fluid 100 times, way more than they do even in other countries, and the government is protecting their ability to do that. A life-saving thing again. This isn't, look, gas is important. If gas prices go up, you don't necessarily die. For people who need insulin, it is very much about their health and perhaps their life. Now that of course is all lost because Cathy McMorris Rodgers doesn't give a damn about any of this. So who do you want in charge? Do you want Democrats that are going to identify a problem and come up with an actual workable solution? Or do you want people like her? Because on the right, you don't really have much else. I want to bring up this graphic. I went and found, very few people seem to actually care about this. I went and found the actual Republicans who voted in favor because I just wanted to see, is it possible that Madison Cawthorn voted for it? Or Lauren Boebert or Marjorie Greene? They say that they're against the elites. They say it over and over and over again. But oddly enough, they vote exactly like the Republican establishment. And it's important that we bear that in mind.
Yes, and my response to that, to Cathy McMorris Rodgers, is, well, why don't we come up with a better system than what you say is price fixing? And that system is negotiation.
Yeah,
they're against negotiating drug prices. Now, their God King is Donald Trump, who did the art of the deal, who would probably argue to find the best means by which to lower prices through negotiation. And these medications are inelastic goods. It's the economic term, which means that no matter how high the price goes, you will pay it because the demand's not going to change. Like if I don't want Nikes because they get more expensive, I don't need to buy Nikes. But you need to buy insulin or you're going to go into shock and you're going to die or you'll lose a limb. And so you'll pay any price necessary. Now, the only way to combat that is through bulk buying from the government. And so that is the solution that everyone else uses that works, that is the reason other countries pay less in drug prices than we do. And the Republicans are against it because they are for packing the pockets of big pharma.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.